Welcome back to the Positive Gains podcast. Today, my special guest is Natalie Arriola of the Mujeresintheknow podcast. Natalie, how are you?
Hi, Mike. I'm doing super good. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
Absolutely. Before we get started into the questions, I wanted to tell you that I remember when I started podcasting a little over 2 years ago, your profile and a few others were some of the ones that I drew inspiration from because specifically yours, I liked how it had lots of color, and sometimes you would like do stuff via, I imagine, Zoom, but you would also be out and about, like on the town and stuff. So I wanted to give you a shout out there. Part of my podcast is, inspired by yours.
Wow, I didn't expect that. Thank you, Mike. And I just want to say, when I feel the same way, because I remember when I first started, you were the first ones that popped up, and you know how it says like you need to follow this person or whatever. And wait, you followed me, right? I don't remember how that happened, but same exact for me. I've got inspiration from you because we were just starting out. Me and you were new podcasters, and I couldn't believe the community of podcasters that's out there, and we all just support each other. And I don't know how you, and I have questions for you too, but I know you're interviewing me today, so thank you for having me. And I love your podcast, and I hope that I can do a good job right now.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Appreciate you.
Yeah.
So like the first thing that I always ask people is like general background information, whatever you want to share, like where you're from, and just a little bit how you grew up, if you're comfortable with it.
Oh, sure. So I'm born and raised in the Rio Grande Valley of South Texas. I was born in McAllen, Texas, raised in Edinburgh, Texas. So I lived there my whole life. And then I moved around 24. I got married. I had 2 sons. My husband he's a veteran. He went to Iraq, and he deployed and all that. So he's moving around pretty frequently. And so of course we go with him wherever he goes. And it's just kind of how we work here with our family. So we're kind of used to it by now. We've moved like 4 or 5 times already since we've been married. So so I'm from the Rio Grande Valley. I live in Corpus Christi, Texas now. And I've always been in Texas. I went to school. I went to the University of Texas Pan American. At the time, that's what it was called. It's now has a different name. I got my bachelor's degree in mass communication, broadcast journalism. And I didn't go further in my education after that. I just got my bachelor's, and so I have all this knowledge and all the skills that I learned in college about broadcast media. And when I became a mom and I had my first son, I was not using my knowledge and my skills and that I learned in school. And I started feeling really like down about it, and what can I do? What can I do to use my skills, my talents, my knowledge? And I don't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. So one day it was kind of just like an epiphany moment. It hit me like a ton of bricks, just start a podcast. And I don't know, maybe God told me or something, because it was kind of out of nowhere. And I was like, I can do that, a podcast, I can do that, and you don't have to show your face too much if it's audio only. And mine's audio only. So I get nervous on camera sometimes and doing video. So it just seemed so perfect. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to do this. And I went through I was in a postpartum depression actually at the time that I started my podcast, and it helped me get out of it. So it's been a big blessing to me. So it's just like crazy. And I'm just grateful that for podcasting in general. And Mike, what podcasting can do for someone and for the listeners as well. So that's how it started. Now, like I said, I'm a mom of 2. I'm not working at the moment. I just left my job. I was working with the city, and now I'm a stay-at-home mom again. And now I'm like, okay, what am I going to do next? Should I start a business? So that's where I'm at right now.
Okay. Nice. So you had a quite the background in like media and communications, and um, whether it had been like an epiphany from God that, kind of pushed you towards it. What is Mujeres in the Know exactly?
Yeah, so it started off as Latina Moms in the Know, where I got together with some of my mom friends and we discussed the joys and the struggles of being a mom.
Mm,
And I thought, okay, wait, I'm this podcast is for moms, but I want to reach a broader audience. So I changed the name to Mujeres in the Know, which means women. So I can relate to all women. And when that happened, that's when I started branding. And that's the one thing I didn't learn in college. It was branding. I said, I never learned that. That's weird. So I had to learn, I taught myself how to brand it. Like you said, Mike, all the colors and the purple and the pink and all that. And I was just like, this is what I want to do. And it kind of just all came together. And what it is, so Mujeres in the Know discusses topics that resonate with women in their community. So we discuss everything. I interview women who are doing well or doing of service in their community. Maybe they have their own business. Maybe they're a founder. Maybe they don't have to have a business. They can just be employed with a company. So it's just I literally, you know how it works, Mike. I send an email, I reach out to someone and see if they want to be a guest on the podcast. So that's what the purpose of the podcast is to empower women, enlighten women, educate women, and inspire women. And so that's really what it's all about. And that's my goal for it. And I've gotten a lot of positive feedback as validation, but even if I don't get a message about an episode, if it just kind of, I put it out there and I don't really get any feedback, I try not to lose my momentum. And that's very important for a podcaster, is to stay passionate.
Yeah, and I feel like people don't necessarily believe it at times when they're on the outside looking in to podcasting, that, when you say, because I've said the same thing, like if I put something out and if the only people that listen to it is my family, then I feel good about it. And I think it's hard for people to wrap their minds around that at times, because the human nature in people wants you to believe that if a certain episode doesn't resonate with somebody, then, maybe you should stop doing it. And so I share the same thoughts that, if only one person listens, or if it only helps one person, then, the job has been done.
Yes. And it's very important as the host. I don't know how it is for you, Mike, but for me to feel empowered too.
Right.
If I'm going to talk to amazing woman who's doing all these great things, I need to feel good myself, or else I'm not going to do a good job. So every now and then I will take breaks from recording an episode if I feel like, okay, I need to fill up my cup again. So I will make sure I do that. I'm not ashamed to do it. And maybe it happens more frequently than I would like for it to, but it's just such a passion of mine. And I'm telling you, I know it sounds but podcasting has like changed my life. I know.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's a great perspective. And that kind of leads me into the next thing, which is, the growth and learning. Like, what have you learned from starting your own podcast? It could be the ups, the downs, the good and the bad. Just what have you learned so far?
So much, but I would say the one that sticks out to me the most is, wow. I've learned that if you don't go into podcasting, and if you create a podcast and you don't really know what you're trying to do with it, you're just kind of, we'll see how this works out. It's going to be really hard unless you have a clear vision in your mind of what you're trying to do and what the purpose and the goal is. And I knew that in my, what I wanted to do with my podcast. So that's what I've learned the most is you need to have a clear vision in your mind of what you want your podcast to be.
The vision. Yeah. We've talked about that. Like a vision board has helped. So yeah, you got to help yourself navigate through it as best you can. What about goals though? Like what goals are you hoping to knock down in 2023?
That's a good question, Mike, because I've been back and forth with that. And I was talking to my friend the other day and I told her that she mentioned that, have you ever thought of teaching other people how to start a podcast? And I said, well, let me look around and see if there's any jobs, right? And I don't know if you ever look, Mike, but I found maybe a couple of jobs for podcasters for like a podcast producer. I haven't seen it. I'm here in Texas. I think I've seen like two jobs, not here in my city, but in different cities. And anyway, so she mentioned to me if I was interested in doing that, and I said, yeah, I am. And she's saying that I should start my own, try and go to companies, go to businesses and do a presentation and tell them this is what a podcast can do for your company, for your business. This is what how it can help you guys grow. So I'm thinking of brainstorming on that right now.
Wow. So thinking outside the box, and it's always I guess the next level, right? Podcasting is such a big environment, like you said, community. I didn't realize that there were so many people. And then you get on here and you look at all the different ones. So hats off to you for being creative, because it is hard to be creative.
Yeah, and unless you're getting sponsorships or what else? How else can you make money podcasting, Mike?
Really, the sponsorships are the big ones that I've seen so far. Unless you have a big following from word of mouth or something like that, it's the sponsorships. So
yeah, definitely. So and podcasts have been around for a long time, but I feel like it just started getting momentum recently, like when COVID hit. Did you start a podcast when COVID hit?
I did.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
And that was a great time for us because everybody was at home and they were trying to find comfort in any way possible. And the podcast, you just tune in and whatever you're listening to, if it's something uplifting, then you can get it from that podcast. Yeah, it's crazy.
Exactly. Next thing I have is kind of like it's a big deal in my opinion. I look at everything that you're doing and you're like a beacon of light, for women and other people, because like you said, you're bringing women on and you're allowing them to share. And I feel like at times, women can kind of get pushed aside. That's the way things have been. So trying to get that change and promoting the change starts within, right? And so that's what you've been able to do. So yeah, you've been a beacon of light for so many women and giving them a voice. So reflecting back, how does that make you feel?
Nobody's ever said it like that. That sounds, wow, beacon of light, man. I'm gonna get emotional. That's really nice, Mike. Thank you. But how does it feel? It feels like is it me doing that? Sometimes like the whole imposter syndrome comes in, like, am I really doing this? And I'm like, wow, that's awesome. And I don't want to stop. I just want to keep on helping other women to reach their full potential. And a good thing about my podcast is it's a tool. I consider it a tool for me to use when I want to put a spotlight on another woman who's doing amazing in the community and just serving others. That's my opportunity to say, do you want to be on my podcast? And it's a tool for me. So it feels like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. If that makes any sense.
Perfect sense.
Yeah.
What about like your favorite episode? You've done quite a bit, like I said, even out and about. So if you had to navigate maybe one that resonated with you a little bit more than the other, which one would you probably pick?
That's a tough one. Do you have a favorite of yours?
No, I can't ever pick one. I've always had to pick maybe like three, because they all, I don't know, things have hit me differently but have made one big connection, if that makes sense. So if you don't have one, you don't have to pick one, you can pick multiple.
Well, the one I feel has been like mean the most to me was probably my first my interview with a public figure in the Rio Grande Valley. She's an attorney. I really just, she was the first big guest I had for the podcast. So she really helped me feel confident, that she's wanted to be on my podcast. So not only that, her name's Leah Wise. She's an attorney in the Rio Grande Valley. And she helped me to feel like I can do it. And her advice that she gave me that I'll never forget was be easy on yourself, if that makes any sense.
Be easy on yourself.
Yes.
Has it been hard to stick with that, or?
Yeah, us as women, as girls, we're very hard on ourselves, and I'm sure men are too. They just don't talk about it as much. But yeah, we're very hard on ourselves. So, and I think the reason it resonated with me is because I needed to hear that at that moment. But it's not just about me, because other people have heard it and they said, wow, this episode really helped me, and it helps me, but I really, the goal is it's for the listeners. But so that was the one that means the most to me. Which one that I enjoy, do I feel is just maybe the one that sticks out to me the most? I would have to say, they all do. It's because every time I don't know how you feel, Mike, every time I get behind the microphone, it's just like, you and the guest, and I don't do videos, so it's a little different for me, but it's just such a cool moment. And every person that I've talked to has just been amazing. And especially, all of them. And I'm trying to think of one to just pinpoint, but it's just, they've all been so amazing.
I usually say the same thing too. I can always pick, but I learn from everybody that has ever come on. And that's, I think, the beauty of the podcasting, because, the listeners are getting to learn, but I always feel as the host, you're learning as well.
How did you get Omar Gooding Jr. on your podcast?
Simple. I mean, really, it's just Instagram. A lot of people ask how it's done, and that's usually how I do it. I make a message and put it through in the DM, and sometimes I hear back, sometimes I don't. There's other ways to go about trying to get people, but to answer that question directly with Omar, in regards to Omar, it was Instagram.
Wow, that's awesome. You've had some really high profile people on your podcast. I'm like, how does he do that? How does he get them on? But
yeah.
It's so cool because, people, like I said, it gives us an opportunity to, like you said, be a beacon of light. And that's what I feel podcasting can do. And that's why I feel it's so powerful, because we can do that as hosts. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the next thing I like to bring up is always advice. And I know you've probably been in the trenches with podcasting. There's probably been times where, maybe you thought somebody be willing to help and they didn't, and not even like a potential guest, just maybe a fellow podcaster. So when you've seen certain things that have happened in regards to podcasting, what advice would you give to somebody, again, if they wanted to start one? Because you've done it for a little while now, so you kind of understand the ins and outs. So I'm curious to know what advice would you give somebody?
Yeah, if they don't have any knowledge on how to edit the audio or edit the video, however they're doing it, or if they don't know where to start, I would say start small. So have a small audience and start small, and then just it'll grow, because that's what me and you, I'm sure you did as well. It was I knew the community I wanted to speak to, which was the community I grew up in.
Mhm.
And I knew that I wanted this podcast to be for them. And if it grows, I didn't even think about that. All I knew was that I wanted it to be for this group of people. So I would say start small and a small group of people and create episodes for that certain audience, a target audience. And then your podcast will continue growing, and just don't give up, because there's moments when we're like, why am I even doing this? But every time you get behind the microphone, you'll shake it off, and you'll feel like, oh, I remember why I'm doing this, why I started. So just always know the why did you start the podcast? Keep it fresh in your mind, because it'll just keep you going and give you motivation and give you fuel to continue podcasting.
Absolutely. Know your why. That is a big one. And even in life, you can have that. That's more free free game, not just in podcasting. Know your why in life as well. So that's great.
Yeah, and I worked at a radio station. So I was a news producer for 710 KURV in McAllen, Texas. I was the first female news producer. And then I worked for 956 Sports, a local news source in the Rio Grande Valley, which was I was the first female news reporter for 956 Sports. So I worked with men. They were all men, and it was really interesting. And I learned a lot from these. They were a little older than me, but that's not a big deal. And I learned from them, and they taught me. I mean, from the switchboard, I learned how to fade in and fade out to commercials, and put the host on the air, go on air, answer phone calls at the same time. So that's where I got my experience. And that's another thing I don't think I talk about enough is when you're in a job and you feel like maybe you have nothing to learn there's something to learn. And that's where I got my the basic skills of how to make sure your audio is not passing a certain point. Is it -12 or something? Make sure it's not, you don't have any distortion. So I take it very seriously, because I learned that when I was working at radio stations or being a news reporter. So when the podcast came to my mind as an idea, I thought, wait, I already know what I need to do. I just need to do it.
Absolutely. Wow. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. It's good to have life lessons, and then they manifest for you in the future without even knowing it.
Yes.
So what can you share that you have going on for you without spoiling anything? If I don't know if you got any spoilers, but what are you working on now for the new year?
So I don't know how you feel, Mike. I've had this podcast going for 3 years, and that was my goal. My goal was to have, in March, it'll be 3 years. My goal was to keep it going for 3 years. I don't know why I came up with 3 years. I just came up with 3 years for some reason, that I wanted to keep it going for 3 years. So in March, it will be 3 years. And so now that's why I'm thinking of, what can I do with it? How do I don't want to just for it to die out and fade away. So what can I do? And I'm reaching out to some friends and that are helping me figure out what I can do next, like the business or whatever, and teaching other people how to create their podcast and what it can do. So as far as actual episodes, I'm working on, I'm not sure yet.
Oh, I understand. I fully understand.
Yeah. Do you go through moments like that where you're like, not sure what to do? I mean, everybody has those moments, but how do you handle it, right?
Kind of a vision board. Like, I like to center around things, and mine isn't really traditional, so I don't really do like weekly. Some people are fortunate enough to be able to do that, but for myself, I always have a guest. I've never done an episode alone. So I just try to keep it all in perspective and kind of bounce around and then come back. But everything will always center back to it. And that's kind of what helps me. I don't really focus on like, and it's just me. I need like 4 episodes a month or 5 or 6. I try to get 1 or 2 done and I hope that they're meaningful enough, because I've learned a long time ago, quality versus quantity, and people will appreciate it. So that's how I do it. I kind of stopped trying to worry about numbers and things like that, and just going in different avenues. So like you said, if you're going to do a business, maybe put some time into that, and different things, and then that way your mind's not cloudy, but you just don't feel like tunnel. You're able to breathe a little bit.
Yeah, and that's what when I first started, I had like a calendar book and I was so organized. I was doing 1 to 2 episodes a week, and that it was very structured.
Mhm.
And this year for 2023, I'm like, I don't know. It's been different. So I'm trying to figure out how am I going to structure it now and what am I going to do? But yeah, because it can be a lot. It's podcasters have how many hats? We have like 20 hats that we do: producer, host, marketing, editing, graphic designer, all these things that we do. So it's a lot. Yes. And I'm the kind of person that if I'm doing something that means a lot to me and I'm very passionate about, I like to be, I'm not a control freak, I promise, but as far as the podcast goes, I like to be in control of it. So I'm like, maybe I should bring someone on to help me, but I don't, it's not there yet. Also, it may be about, if it was at, I was got some sponsorships or whatever, and I could pay the person, that would be different. But right now it was a passion project is how it started out, and it turned into something that I didn't know it was going to turn in. I wasn't expecting that. I knew what I wanted to do with it, you know what I mean? But I didn't know what was going to happen. So when, people will ask me a question like, well, did you have this in mind? Like, is this what you wanted to do with it? And like, I knew I knew that I wanted to inspire, empower, enlighten, educate other women, and come to see that men also listen to the podcast. There's about like 30% men. Yeah. So it's like, and I don't really pay attention to the numbers either, Mike. I try to not focus on that too much because you can get very caught up in it. Yes, you need to know where you're at, but I don't want to get too caught up in the numbers because that's not why I got into it. You know what I mean? Yeah.
So, no, you hit the nail on the head right there. And I don't know if you want, but if you wanted to share your part of your merchandise that you have right there, or something else that you have.
Yeah. So this is actually a table cover, and I'll go ahead and share with you where I got this flower idea from. So I don't know if you've heard the song by Selena called Como la Flor. Mm-hmm. Very popular song by her. So one day I was driving in my car and it came on in the radio, and I hadn't heard the song maybe, a lot of times, but I really listened to it at that moment. And I thought, como la flor means like the flower. So I said, it was just resonated with me when I was listening to the song. And I said, it just stuck in my mind. And when I was creating my logo, I said, I'm going to put the flower like in that Selena song, Como la Flor. So that's where the flower came about. Of course, the name is, I don't know how I came up with the name. I just came up with it. Mujeresintheknow podcast. Well, it started off as Latina Moms, but then I changed it to Mujeres to reach a broader audience. I don't know how I came up with In the Know. It just popped up in my mind. But so that's how that. And then I also have a quote.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is like the quote.
Okay.
Keep it bright and shine la luz always. So keep it bright and shine la luz. La luz in English means light. So shine the light always. And I came up with that because I grew up Christian. I was raised in the Church of Christ. I went to church every Sunday, Wednesdays sometimes too. And there was a song we would sing in church. It was called Que la luz, something with la luz, the light. And I remembered that song. And when I was coming up with a slogan, I guess that's how I came up with that. So, and that's another thing is I feel like my podcast, I try to I don't try not to make it religious or political, but sometimes it does go that way, but it's okay. And
Yeah.
uh, and like I said, I was raised in the church basically. So now that I'm older, I have a mind of my own and I see things differently, but I still have those values of moral values of what Christians have. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, that's great. And I'm glad you was able to share, your merchandise, because like I was saying in the beginning, that's the first thing that I remember. It was, real bright, and then the shirt, and I love the outline, of it.
Have you
Um,
ever thought of putting your face or in your logo?
yeah, but not my face. I'll probably either do. I have a lot of ideas. I'm thinking of maybe the character from my book, maybe. That might be an avenue, but I think it might be a while before I get to that point, but we'll
And
see.
I wanted to congratulate you on the book because that's so cool. That I mean, I've always wondered, how does someone put a book together? Do you have to do you plan? Of course, you plan it out, but I'm just so curious how that process works. I mean, we can talk about that another time, though.
Yeah. Well, after this, just stick around. After we get off the filming. Excuse me. Last thing though is where are you at on social media?
So social media, you can follow me Instagram at Mujeresintheknow, Facebook at Mujeresintheknow, or you can follow my personal account. It's Chatnat with a Z at the end. And so that's my social media. Right now, I'm just trying to, and how do it's crazy because I was like, what am I gonna? How do I tell Mike that my podcast is gonna end? It's
Oh,
gonna
it's coming
stop.
to an
Yeah,
end.
coming on the 3 years, and I was like, do I tell him? But it's not ending. That's a strong word, but it's gonna I'm taking a break from producing episodes and start in March. It'll be 3 years, and I'm kind of dramatic about it. Sorry.
I wasn't sure if that's where you were going earlier when you
Yeah.
talked about the time frame. I kind of thought you were hinting around maybe stopping, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I'm taking a break for sure. A break for sure. I don't want to delete my account, nothing like that. But it's like, what would you do, Mike, if you decided that you were going to stop producing episodes?
Wow. And that's kind of why I do the other avenues, because then it keeps my mind fresh, with the book and other things like that. That kind of like I was saying, makes it come back whole again, if you will.
Yeah,
Because
and I say that, but then I get inspired. I find someone new, someone in the community who's doing great things, and I get inspired. And I'm like, I need to have her on my podcast. But so it's like, am I ever going to be able to stop podcasting? I don't know. I don't think I am, but I am definitely taking a break from producing episodes. Yeah, that's what's going on. But I have 2 kids. I have two boys, an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old, and they keep my hands really full.
yeah.
And then my husband, he you know how that goes. And then what else? Well, I'm also involved in nonprofit organizations. I'm a member of organization of women executives in the Rio Grande Valley. I'm also a board member for Bastion RGV. They're a choir that sings in different communities in Texas. So I'm going to focus on that more, is my service to these nonprofits. And I'm going to see, what I can do for them this year. So I forgot to mention that is going to be my focus, is to help the nonprofits that I'm involved in, and at the same time, try and get something going for myself. Yeah. See what I can do. If maybe, like I said, I'm working on that, possibly teaching other companies and businesses how to start their own podcasts. And Mike, what a podcast can do. And it's just, there's so much possibilities. It's crazy. So I have all these ideas in my mind, and now I'm just jotting them down and trying to come up with a solid plan. Because when I started this podcast, I didn't have a solid plan. I didn't have a business plan. I just had vision and an
Yeah.
idea, so I didn't have anything on paper, and I'm like, okay, now if I go into a venture, I'm going to make sure I have everything on paper or typed on the computer and just all organized and stuff. And so yeah, that's what's going on. And it's been, like I said, just a huge blessing to me. When I was first started, it just did so much for me and for others, because I do get messages from people who say, hey, this episode really helped me out. And, and that was my main thing, is just, I want, when people listen to my podcast, I want for them to feel better. It's that, I just want for them to feel better. And so that's really cool.
Well, major salute to you for that, because that's a big task. Service above self.
Yes.
There's no shame in that. But I do appreciate you, Natalie, for being a guest and, coming on, taking the time out of your busy day. And we'll chat right now. But if there's anything that you need from me, let me know, and you're always welcome back on.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you in a bit.